let's just, I want to start right now from the transangelic exodus, because there's a lot of things that at first it might look that I don't connect or don't relate with it, but I do in a lot of ways.
Tell me more.
Yeah, because actually this is something I'm going to be very candid about. It usually I don't talk about this, but
please.
I had breast cancer, and this was actually the first festival I did about 4.5 years ago, after my first surgery. So it's always very emotional to be here. Yeah. But as
this was like you came back to work.
Yeah, immediately here. I felt it was very helpful for me to do what I love and what I like as a healing process. It was it was very beautiful for me to talk with bands that I really love, to talk with people that while I was in that early process, because it has been for 5 years, surgery after surgery, but talk with people that I used to listen to their music when I was down or when I needed some a little bit more you know what I mean?
And then you're there with them.
And then I'm there with them and talking with them. So that was a healing process for me too, in many ways, by listening, by talking to them, by being in a festival, by doing what I love. But as you progress on this disease, and when you start doing other stuff like reconstruction and stuff like that, I met other people, and I met transgender people who were going through some parts of it that I was going through too.
Yeah, bodily changes and surgery
and surgery and all that.
A change in sort of self-conception, even. Yeah.
And so we kind of lean on each other, because at the end we were very much alike in so many things. You know what I mean? We had our scars. Yeah. We had our problems, and we were all trying to find our place in the world and being accepted with everything that has happened to us, and trying to get back to our lives and get back to the world and being accepted for who we are now. Yes. Because we are different, or they were always different. I wasn't. So that was this given, the exchange that was so powerful. Yeah. And it meant so much to me, and I know that it meant so much to them too, to share our scars and I think when we look at our scars only, maybe we just keep in our shell, and it's more difficult to overcome a lot of things. And if we share with other people and we see different perspectives, it's so beautiful. And this album of yours touched me very deeply, because it has a little bit to do with this.
Oh, for sure. A lot. I mean, you're
I didn't mean to overwhelm you with all this thing, but just a way for me to tell you how much it meant to me, and how much it means to me to be talking to you in this place and in this moment.
Well, thank you. That's an honor to hear you say that. And I mean, everything you just said resonates deeply for me of what the album is about. I mean, even just so the record just thematically has a lot of those images of being wounded or scarred or bodily transformed, and leaving a hospital. There's an escape from a hospital on the first song of the record. There's a person who's become an angel and has grown wings and is undergoing some changes. There's but on a deeper level, there's it's something about solidarity. I think that's what I have been most interested in with the songs I've put on this album, is how people find solidarity in one another, and why, and how our bodies, I mean our the stigmatized human body that is like different and has been changed, like can get you in trouble, and it can ally you with other people in exactly the way you're talking about.
When you when you were making this album, because I think we're living in times that I never thought I would live again, like when vulnerable people and the people who need more empathy than ever are kind of being taken by outcasts and being like pointed by society, in such a aggressive level that I thought we were better. I thought we were going to evolve into a better place, and we're not. When you were making the album, did you think by now we would be worse?
I mean, I really was hoping these songs wouldn't feel as relevant as they feel. Because I was writing them mostly in 2016. Early in 2016, when things started to feel really frightening. I mean, the public conversation, especially what comes to mind is the American presidential election and the campaign of that, and how like being like a white supremacist and a misogynist was actually not only not a liability, but was a selling point for someone to gain enormous power. And so many people I know started feeling more afraid, and I started feeling more afraid. I grew up with a lot of Holocaust education, and I have ancestors. I have grandparents who were Holocaust refugees, and so I learned about their lives where they were kids who survived because they ran away. Their families left home and became refugees, and were sort of forced into hiding. And they were the more. Sometimes it seems like some of the survivors were more paranoid, and that is why they survived. And I wonder how paranoid to be, or like how fast it would happen for things to really get unsafe for me or for others, and how unsafe things actually are for certain people. And even for me, even though I am around, I'm in a society where I don't feel that vulnerable, but then I'm alone on a street and somebody says something horrible to me, and I kind of see, like when somebody, that could just happen so fast. You could become unsafe so quickly. So I wanted to write a record about the fear and paranoia, but also the sort of solidarity that leads to, and you sort of start to take refuge
more
in
than
each other.
ever to be solidary with other people and to show empathy. There's no empathy. That's one thing that kind of like, I don't know how that switch turns off on people's heads and hearts, like to offend you on the street. Or for me, once when I first put on the swing set and you could see my scars, a lady at the beach came to me and said that I should cover it up. Yeah, that was like a big thing in Portugal. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
and then I thought like I never experienced this before, but how does other people who have been fighting for this all their lives? I just fell in my skin, because one thing is for me to fight with them, and I did that all my life. I've always been very active in all those questions and all that fighting. And then suddenly I was one who needed for them to fight for me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think with your music and this album, that's what you're doing too, in your way, with your art.
I'm hoping that it's it's partly intended as exercise in empathy. I mean, there's that song "No Place" where it's about people leaving home in the middle of the night because home's not safe anymore, and it's not something I've had to do, but that's something tons of people are doing lately. It's a world refugee crisis, as I'm sure you know, right now, and
we know, and we do nothing. It's something that kind of, it's also very scary, because how do you explain to a child when they grow up that we did nothing for them? Why is my life worth more than theirs? It's kind of hard to explain to a human being.
I mean, and we were always growing up and learning about the Holocaust. And I went to a Jewish school until I was 13 or so.
And you are Jewish, and
I am Jewish,
practice and truly Jewish, right?
Well, yeah, I'm an observant Jew in a kind of a traditional way, and also a very untraditional in some ways, as I'm sure you could tell. But so. Yeah, I was going to say that you're sort of invited to ask yourself, like, if somebody in my world was like, their life was threatened for essentially no reason, would I stand up for them, you know? Or would you play the part of the Germans who kind of played along and didn't want to ruffle anyone's feathers? Or like, you know, and when it came down to it, most people didn't want to put their life on the line for it. And that's like a deeply difficult question that I was thinking about when I was a kid. And then now, I don't know, to see white supremacy on the up and up, on the rise, and to see my country respond.
It can happen again.
Yeah, see my country and so many countries responding to a refugee crisis by like turning more people away, arresting people who are seeking asylum legally, and separating parents from children. Like, that's the response. It just awakens all of that, like childhood nightmares, you know. And that's what led to this Paranoid record which we made, and it also, but I think it's really important that it's like it's a record about solidarity, about hoping for a guardian angel, and hoping to be somebody's guardian angel.
I think you did. And I think we can all do it a little bit every day. We can be heroes just for one day.
You can do something. You can do something.
I think sometimes people say, what can I do? You can do.
Well, you can vote. You can get other people to vote. I mean, that's one of the most powerful things we have. Yeah. That's what I've been obsessed with lately. But anyway.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about the music itself.
Yeah,
because I love all this synergy of things that you do with your music and your art, because you don't expect one thing to exactly match the other. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah, and I love your raw rock and roll feeling, and kind of a little bit of glam, a little bit of punk, and it's all because it's not an exercise of rock and roll. It's very vivid experiences that you put in your music. So in this album, you also have very complex musics, but then you have very simple ones that kind of reminiscence to early rock and roll. So how is that something that just comes out of you when you're making music, or that's something that you wanted to do that way? Because you've been doing it since the beginning, since Ezra Furman, what was the first one, and the Boyfriends?
And the Harpoons,
the Harpoons,
actually. The first one, yeah.
The first one, the Boyfriends, and now Visions.
Well, in some ways, like, I've been pushing against my default instincts, because this record is not what naturally came out of me, or or any of us. I mean, all these songs were imagined totally differently than they eventually turned out to be. Yeah, we made whole versions and like complete demos of songs, and then changed almost everything about them. And I guess I wanted to make something like intuitive, powerful, and not like overly complicated, but also unusual, and something that didn't sound like a record I had already heard.
It is a little bit. Can I just interrupt you for a second? Because there's a when we pick up on "I Love You So Bad," for instance, it's something that kind of reminiscence of my youth and like a adolescent love.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And it kind of like tricks me into, I want to dance and I want to be free again, and I want to reach out for that innocence that eventually you lose at some point in your life. Yeah. Because life changes, and then you grow up and you have to face life in a different way.
Yeah.
And that song kind of brings you back to that innocent, free, adventurous love, and also deception, and also, maybe that's not
watching it fail, like watching it turn out not the way you hoped.
Exactly.
Well, thanks. I mean, I'm proud of that one actually, because for all the, there's characters and situations on the record, but none of them really tell a story, and that's the only song that really tells a full story. It's like a years long love affair in a few minutes. It's nice to hear you compliment it. I have to admit it. It makes me feel good.
No, it's lovely. And I really love the one you spoke that opens the album. Why did you open the album with the Set the Blood for My Wound?
That sort of gives the whole odd situation of me and my angel companion on the run from a oppressive government. It's like all there in a couple verses, and it had to be the first song, because that I wrote at least the first half of that song all at once. It just showed up, and I hadn't had any of that planned. None of that concept was planned. I just came out onto paper and suggested this whole world. And I like how it arrives like a vision. It arrives like this. You're just already in it. You just wake up bleeding in the crotch of a tree. I could see that suggested sort of a whole movie, kind of, and and it
also with the artwork, it suggests that too. I'm sure
you think?
Kind of the movie.
The album cover.
Yeah, the album cover. It could be like.
It's a good photo. My friend took.
Yeah, it is.
My friend Jason Simmons, and it reminds me a little of Taxi Driver. The end of Taxi Driver, when he looks in the rearview mirror, and you get like a flash of paranoia.
But do you think that you close the album with kind of little trick of a mind, but with a hopeful kind of note?
Oh yeah,
it's
the note of like that last song, I Lost My Innocence, is where
kind of what you're talking about.
Kind of locates like where the powerless find their power. That it is sort of a fun, even a little bit kind of lighthearted love song, but it's also got this experience of being young and queer has changed me for life and put me on the side of the outlaw, the outcast, the queer.
And it's kind of like saying it's okay to be different, and it's okay to, if you don't know quite yet, how to deal with it. It's okay.
I hope so. Yeah, to me it shows that there's oddly a kind of power in having been marginalized, you know? It gives you a take on the world that is vital, valuable, and like it's kind of gives you this world of other queer people to take power in together. Yeah, I don't know.
I understand. I had we have to go because they're telling me to wrap it up,
yeah.
but I just want to.
Sure.
Yeah. But
I must go somewhere else.
You have to go somewhere else, but this really reminds me of a talk that I had with Peerage, you know, from Psychic TV.
I don't know what you're referring to, but I'm interested.
Okay, I'll send you or something. He's totally amazing. His music is amazing, but he has like this love for Lady Jane, and they decided to become like one person, so they became genderless.
I think I know. I think I heard about
Genesis Theology.
Yes. Oh yeah.
He's
I read a little article about.
He's so amazing, and
Genesis.
he's so. I don't know. I get the chills reminding me of the conversation I had with him, and just to imagine what he'd been through back in those days to transform himself into Lady Jane, and Lady Jane transforming herself into him and becoming one. Because that was their choice, you know, and that was just beautiful, and that's okay, and that's so powerful at the same time. That's just something.
I mean, being a transformed person is it gives you a kind of, I don't know. There's a power all its own to having been transformed.
Thank you so much, Ezra.
It's really good to talk to you.
Oh, it was really good to talk to you too. I'm sorry I don't have that much time.